I would start to get panic attacks when I made something good. Like I would come across a chord change or something because I was always chasing that high of numbers and analytics and all that stuff. It's like you need the data, but you shouldn't obsess about it. You should only look
Mm.
at it when it's important. It should if you look at it every day, then you're constantly measuring yourself to yourself and to other people, and that's going to start taking away from your creativity.
What's up, everybody? Tor here. Welcome back to another episode of Producer Head. Today's guest comes through and really shares a personal story that I think is really helpful. Somebody who's been able to make a living as a sync music artist, and somebody who has really, in the process of focusing on that really deeply, really developed chops as a producer, as a songwriter, learning to work with vocalists and other artists, and also learning that when we focus super deeply on one thing and get, as he puts it, tunnel vision, that we inherently fail to diversify. And so we get into the cost benefit of that, what it means to diversify, what it is to try to build your own path as an independent artist, and to realize that you can do these other things all at once. And so without further ado, here is my conversation with Greg David.
Yeah, man. So for anybody who didn't, I believe your original episodes were 19 and 20, which is wild, man. Some time has passed. But I just wanted, for anybody who hasn't listened to those episodes, and I couldn't recommend enough that you do, obviously. We talked a lot about really creative stuff, technical stuff. We really got into the weeds on saturation and compression and talking a lot about just creativity and maintaining a practice and keeping yourself going. Today, I think, so before we jump into what we're going to do today, I think it'd be really cool if maybe you just give people a little bit of background. I guess I'll set you up a little bit and say the way that I think about you is, and I'm simplifying, of course, is you come into this kind of as somebody who was really a performance-oriented guitarist. You were playing in bands, a live player, and then over time became interested in production and really dove deep to the point where you're also really like an engineer, both a recording and a mixing engineer as well. And so if there's anything else you want to add to give people a little bit of background to understand kind of where you're coming from as you're talking about this today.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I do consider myself, what they would consider a super producer and some
Mm.
kind of things. It sounds kind of ridiculous to say that, but from inception to finished song, I've kind of done every role. I've been the musician, the producer, the tracking engineer, the vocal producer, kind of everything but mastering. But I always aid in mastering too, because I want to envision everything with the artist or myself, depending on what we're working on. And in doing that, I've kind of seen all aspects of music production. It's really the only thing that I know in and out, like from the point you sit down to talk about an idea to the point you upload it on a streaming platform. And now record label stuff too, because I started a record label. So it's kind of this full circle of everything that's involved with it. And I'm really lucky and grateful to like have seen all these things. I just want to make myself useful now and use all these skills that I've kind of accumulated. But yeah, I started as a musician right off the bat, though.
So I'm curious about what did it look like, I guess, because as we were talking a little bit offline, you're in this place now where you're really embracing even more of an entrepreneurial and independent artist kind of attitude and model. And I'm wondering if you can talk about maybe what's brought you to this point and maybe what the recent years have been like for you.
So, as you said, I started as a live musician, and then I pivoted mostly because I saw a lot of my peers, moving on with their careers and doing things. So I started to pivot. I got into making music, and in doing that, I got into sync music. I did that for about half a decade, 6 years, give or take. And after leaving kind of that big conglomerate machine into this kind of independent space, I kind of had to pivot again. My whole career has been just pivoting and learning new things. And, I had to kind of self-adjust and find out like what's important to me. What do I need to move forward? What are the tools that I require? And in doing so, I ended up writing a book to to really as a roadmap to myself so that it would hone my own skills in. And in the process, I kind of was like, well, this doesn't exist for other people. Let me make this into something that's almost a workbook style so that you can apply your own career to it. And because we're all different, we all have different lives, different situations. So hearing my point of view on it, really like, I've done a lot of things right, but I've done a lot of things wrong. And this book kind of explores a lot of the things I did wrong and how I changed that and how I weathered the storm after the fact. And now that I'm on the other side of it, it's kind of hindsight now.
So maybe you can share a little bit about some of the lessons that you learned that were maybe a little bit less than glamorous to learn while you were working as a sync music creator.
I think like in my specific situation, I had a lot of tunnel vision. I talk about this a lot in the book about when you're working for a record label at the behest of someone else, you want to make them happy. You know, like anything, any other job, you want to make them happy. But in doing so, I kind of ignored the other opportunities that I could. And when you just give all of your energy to one thing, when that thing isn't there anymore, then you don't really have anything to stand on. So I started to kind of subconsciously, once I felt that a pivot was coming in my life, I started to change what I was doing. I started to operate in a way that like I was moving towards self-sufficiency, but I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just doing it because I saw that like if my money is coming from one source, if all my opportunity is coming from one source, but I'm not looking at all the extracurricular things, then once that conglomerate is gone in my life, then how can I continue to do this creative thing? So I had to learn to like diversify my finances, who I worked with. I had to learn to put myself out there. I had to kind of like, if you don't get out there and push yourself to get opportunity, and if you're not afraid to put yourself in situations, you have no idea what could come your way. But because I isolated myself so much in that 5-year span, I kind of had to relearn those skills again. Because when you're on a label, everything's handed to you on a platter. Opportunity, money, access. And in doing so, you're actually making the label's access wider, right? You're getting in these situations, you're helping them. But if it's not reciprocal, only just from a financial standpoint, right, then you're not exactly gaining from it. So the thing that I tried to learn was to always have my eyes open, to always look at what was going on. And I didn't think these things were really important until the latter, obviously. But if you're in the system for long enough, and I call it a system because it is a system, it's a conveyor belt, we all think we're special, and we are special and are artistic. But when there's someone that does what you do and you're gone, somebody else gets up on the podium and takes your spot. And it's hard to think of that when you're in the system, right? Because you can't see it. You're blinded by the tunnel vision of being creative and getting your shit done. So a lot of hard lessons in a short amount of time, and a lot of like recalibrating. What does my creative space look like? And how can I protect myself financially? How can I get over my ego? Right? Because you're on a label, you have millions of streams, you're paid, your ego is constantly being inflated. So it's a long period of time of just like, okay, check it out. Check the ego at the door. You know what I mean?
Right. And so can you just give a little bit of context to the situation that you were in, just so that people who aren't familiar with your career can have a better idea of what you're talking about?
So I worked in the sync industry, and when you're in the sync industry, your job is to fill a brief. You get asked to make a thing, or maybe you might work with an artist or a rapper or something. You have to make something creatively, and your job is to really fully envision a creative thing from start to finish. You might not have all the control over what it is, because in the grand scheme of things, like you might make something and it not get picked. So I had a pretty good success rate when it came to that. What I made, I'm not what you consider a lot of producers make like a folder of 20 beats. I never did that. I always had that super producer mindset of, if I'm making a song, it's going to one artist. I'm making this vision for them. Because I never wanted any of the artists to overlap. I wanted it to be unique to every single person that I worked with. So I did that, and I fulfilled every obligation. I signed every contract. I did every session for 5 years, which sounds amazing, right? It sounds glamorous, and I was in songwriting camps and all these stuff, and those are all really fun, amazing things. And you have to use your networking skills so that you can kind of get work in the future also. But in doing so, I wasn't taking care of myself. I was eating like shit. I was drinking 10 cups of coffee a day. I was like not taking care of myself to the detriment of my success, if that makes sense. And the balance was way off. Like, I started kind of realizing, like, oh, well, why am I not being fulfilled? Right? I felt like I was constantly trying to fill that bucket. The next thing. And when you do that, you start to kind of lose, you get numb to it. You know, so in doing that for a long time, I had to really like stop myself and like look at my whole career and be like, okay, vacations are important. Time off is important. I didn't take a day off in 5 years. Every day I worked. Every day I was creating something. And when you do that, you have to live life to be creative, right? You can't just do nothing but make music. Eventually the gas runs out, you know? People call this writer's block. I don't believe in writer's block because you can always make something. But can you fully realize a vision of a song with an artist? And that's kind of a different story than just making something. So, yeah, I mean, it's a multifaceted situation of realizing things.
What would you say to somebody who is, because companies like that are often reaching out to people like us, because there's always a need and always a desire for more, I guess, in a sense, from their perspective, inventory, essentially, right? And
yeah.
And so what would you say would be a reasonable set of expectations for somebody that's considering an opportunity like that, so that maybe they're not unpleasantly surprised, or they can walk in with their eyes open?
I would say, and given my situation, I was in a great situation. Not to say anything bad about the labeler, I was always very grateful of what.
Sure.
But the fact of the matter is, as a creative, you need a lawyer. You need to look at your paperwork. You need to know all your language, and you can't waste time thinking that it's going to work out, because that can bite you in the ass in the future. Like, you really have to know. I talk about this a lot in my book about knowing what in perpetuity means, knowing what, an exit clause is, like fully realizing, like, what am I giving you? What am I getting back? And at what point, am I going to benefit so I can actually maintain a career after I've left the conglomerate? Because every deal ends. Doesn't matter, whether it's short or long. From what I've read, from what I've researched, the average time for somebody to be in a record deal is about 2 years. I spent 5 years. So I've seen A&Rs come and go. I seen artists get let go, get let go, and then I became the person that got let go. So when you see all that kind of bird's eye vision from the top of it, you start to kind of realize like, where is the power? Who has the power? And who's making the decisions both creatively, for your future? You know, don't just sign a contract that comes your way because you think it's an opportunity. You really need to sit down and, like, we have AI now. There's no excuse. If you can't afford it, at least at minimum, you can put your contract in these ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and it will at least explain it to you. Because I think that's the real loophole, is that any record label, when they're coming at you saying, hey, we love your shit, we want to sign you, it's very exciting. It's very endearing. It happens all very quick, and you're kind of taken off by all this positivity that's happening. So all of the kind of clinical decisions about paperwork and all that shit, you're like, no, that's the most important part. That's what you need to focus on. And so that you can use that as leverage to set yourself up for success in the future. Like, record labels, if it's right for you, it can be a great marriage. It can be a perfect situation for you. But you need to have an exit strategy. You need to think towards like your independence. And also you need to build your independence in parallel to your deal. So every song that you put out with the record label, put 2 out by yourself. That all these things need to, and if they're not going to allow that, then you shouldn't be with them. You know what I mean? If they're not willing to discuss these things, they're up to no good. It's just simple fact. So, yeah, I mean, I was very lucky in my situation that I had, you know, like a respectable company that I worked with, and I have everything good to say about them. Like, I'm so glad that I got put in that situation. But because of my own shortcomings, realizing that I wasn't doing these extracurricular things that I needed to do, when that deal was done with, I was kind of left to pick up the pieces because I didn't diversify enough. So this last, year and change has been about kind of figuring out those holes.
What I'm curious about is, it sounds like this gig really took 110% of your attention. And, it sounds like you're kind of describing that as tunnel vision a little bit. And you weren't thinking about creating other paths for yourself outside of it. And I guess I'm wondering how you think about, like, why do you see the independent piece? Because, like, on one hand, you could look for another place to do something similar. You could go work for other people. So there are so many other options that I'm kind of curious about now, why you're so strongly feeling about, like, this independent path and building your own piece.
I think because it has to be done no matter what. Like, I'm still doing things with other labels. I've still released things. I'm still actively working with other companies, and I'm actively looking to work with other companies. But in parallel to that, I'm building a record label. I'm working on putting vinyl out. I'm trying to engage more with fans. I'm trying to do more in real life scenarios. Because, record labels, they have control of a lot of things that you might not think they have control over. Major labels have a lot of agreements with streaming platforms. So if you don't have the full scope of that, if you don't have funnels to kind of see, like, email addresses and data, then when you get out on your own, you don't have any data. You need data to, like, figure out how to do drops, how to work with people, how to set your release up so that it's a true rollout. And if you don't have that data, you can't tell anybody, because social media algorithms are kind of set up to show new people things that are interested in what you do. But if you're trying to retain your fans, then it's not showing to your fans. So the more data that you have, the more control you have. And there's an example I can give you that I've seen. John Bellion. You ever heard of John Bellion? He recently like asked his record label for the email list. Give me the email list. And then he had his fans help the release, the rollout, so that he didn't have to do all this bullshit, which really is temporary fans, to inflate numbers. That's not saying all record labels do it, but some record labels inflate the numbers to make it look bigger than it is. So what do you want? Like I talk about this in my book. Do you want 300,000 people that are just passive listeners, or would you like 1,000 people that are fans? Imagine 1,000 people in a room. That's a lot of people. You know what I mean? Imagine 300,000 people walking by, not caring. That doesn't resonate, right? But 1,000 people in front of your face, 1,000 true fans might turn into 350 tickets or 200 tickets. That's a show. That's a real fan base that you can keep and gain and sell merch to, and that can help you build your brand. So you don't think about these things until you're kind of in this independent space, because you're everything. You're the creative designer, you're the mixing engineer, mastering, the artist, everything.
So, I mean, it sounds like in a way that's part of the trade-off, right? So for one, when you were working with the sync label, they're paying you and they're taking care of a lot of that stuff. In a way, it sounds like it allows you to get to a place where you could really just focus on the music. And I think that's really attractive. What kind of wrapped up in the legal piece of this, the give and get, right, is that you're getting the money in exchange for the music that you make. However, you don't have a lot of business infrastructure for yourself, that you're very reliant on that particular source. What I'm wondering about is, in hindsight, when you think about it now, you were giving so much attention to it. Would it have been possible to be successful at that job and also to have been consistently building what you're now trying to build?
Yeah, I think I would have been more successful if I would have focused on those things, because you hear a lot about burnout. People getting burnout. That's because someone gets stuck in tunnel vision. They've created a feedback loop of thinking that the more time I put into this, the more money, the more monetary gain you'll get from it, right? But in the grand scheme of things, that's not true, because if you take care of yourself, if you take breaks, if you live life, creativity naturally flows. You're not bound by those same anxieties. So I think, yeah, I hate to look in hindsight and shoulda, coulda, woulda scenarios, but yeah, I mean, I would have been more successful had I set up this infrastructure and kind of like ran my ship that way. But I think the appeal is, when you're a young up and coming artist, you are hungry. You want to take every scenario that comes your way. But when you keep doing the same thing and you don't see massive results, at some point you have to stop and like look at the whole scope of things. And if you don't make adjustments, you're hurting yourself. So, these are lessons that you got to learn the hard way, I think, in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, I mean, I probably would have done more, been more successful, and been more financially aware of things.
So I think what you just pointed out, I think, is really insightful, which is this idea that, if I work harder, things will go better for me. But in that's not necessarily untrue. At the same time, it doesn't at least explicitly mention what are you working on so hard, right? And I'm curious now, with all of the experience that you have, how do you determine what are the important things, or where you have the leverage to where your time is well spent to provide the sort of results or moving in the direction that you want to be moving in?
I think that if you kind of look at what you've done and you start looking at what point you are in your life during those events and how things unfolded according to the way that you actually felt emotionally and comfortability of it all, the more comfortable I am, the better my creativity is, right? But when you're in a constant state of tunnel vision, you start to develop anxiety. I actually got to the point, and this is not the first time that I've heard of this, but personally, I would start to get panic attacks when I made something good. Like I would come across a chord change or something because I was always chasing that high of numbers and analytics and all that stuff. It's like you need the data, but you shouldn't obsess about it. You should only look at it when it's important. It should, if you look at it every day, then you're constantly measuring yourself to yourself and to other people, and that's going to start taking away from your creativity.
Taking a quick break from this conversation with Greg David to let you know that he also, in addition to this conversation, gave us an hour-long production session. He made a track from scratch using drum machines, synths, and guitar, talks through his production philosophy, talks about his drum miking setup. There's all kinds of gems in here. Again, it's an hour long and it is free to subscribers of the podcast, producerhead.substack.com, and I will drop you a link to The Pocket, which is an ongoing playlist of videos from other guests on the show sharing their process. Producerhead.substack.com, and I will drop you the link. Let's get back to the conversation with Greg David.
You're going to start making decisions according to the numbers and not according to like how I want to blend this color together, how I want to make this, like artistic decisions. Like I had to take a firm look at, I would see these little kind of successful points in my career, and then I would see the low points and I would start to look at like, well, how was I feeling then? What was my life looking like in those scenarios? And every time without fail, the best times in my creativity was the times where I didn't have to worry about money. I was financially fit and I was comfortable. Everything was right. So it kind of made me look at things and go, oh, I need to live life. I need to like be comfortable in order to make my best art. And in doing so, when you make your best art, financial gains always happen. You don't have to, it's not this like, oh, if I make a bunch of shit, money will come. It's no, focus on the best stuff, taking time, taking care of yourself, and then the opportunity will come. It's just a matter of time. But if you just tunnel vision with nothing but art, and I say as an example, towards the kind of tail end of my being on a record label and all that, I started to do a series on my YouTube of like live things with the band, because that's like my true passion, is to be playing with musicians in a room. I spent 5 years by myself and I come from the live music world. So I was really like wanting to feed that creative part in my journey. And so I started to do that. That was the first subconscious thing that I was starting to do to kind of separate myself. And in doing so, I created the best art because I wasn't thinking about the financial gain. I was just kind of putting the pieces together, finding the right musicians, booking a studio at a session, all that. And then I would feel all this joy from like playing with people versus like, on a day of release, you're like, oh, it's finally out. You shouldn't wait until the day you put something out to be happy about it. You should be happy the moment you finish it. So it started to bring that love back to doing these live sessions, but I realized something so critical to the success of it. I wasn't marketing right. I wasn't putting as much energy into the creative side as I was the business side. That was the first tipping point that made me realize tunnel vision isn't the right way. Like if you have a team of 10 people helping with you, then yeah, you can focus, you can be more tunnel vision. But if you're one person, a lot of things are going to get thrown to the wayside in the process.
Yeah, I would say another word for tunnel vision, maybe in this context, you could kind of substitute it for maybe specialization and focus. And I do feel like there is an emphasis these days to become a specialist. And the idea is that get really good at one thing and you'll be okay. And it's interesting because essentially what I feel like what you're describing is really to become more of a generalist and to be somebody who does many different things. And that will actually give you more, I don't know, maybe more possibility and bring more potential opportunity.
It's a double-edged sword, right? Because if you're jack of all trades, no one can really pinpoint what you actually do. So you're constantly just like floating in this thing. Artists, creatives, musicians, they might know what you do because they know the intricacies. But like fans, people on social media, they don't know what you do. If you're constantly doing other things, they can't really pinpoint what you're doing. So it's like good to have the skills, but if you're using that to like build your brand, it's going to be really hard for people to like focus in on what you're doing. And I'm just realizing this now after all these things. Like, that's why I started a record label, because I had to start to realize, where is all these things that I've learned? They need to go somewhere. I need to do something with it. If I'm just focused on my own career, what I'm doing, all these skills that I've accumulated won't get used. You know, because I'll have to like streamline each process and use those abilities while I'm doing them versus using them to help other creatives in my downtime when I'm taking my breaks. So that's a realization too.
What did you take away as benefits from having tunnel vision for so long? Because, I mean, how many songs did you make in 5 years?
Oh, I mean, my catalog is what I took away. I mean, I have almost 200 songs out there. I mean, I've worked with a dozen record labels. I've worked with so many artists that I couldn't even sit here and name them all off to you. Of course, I have my favorites, the people that I return, business with me. But yeah, my catalog generates money. So it's good to have tunnel vision, because like publishing, royalties, all that stuff, it pays you money and it's great when that royalty check comes in. But I think when you start to really focus in on your craft and start to make real high level art, which at this point, with how technology is looking, having that high level echelon art is what's going to actually bring in a billion streams versus a few million. A few million streams, you need to have a catalog of 200 songs to actually make some money off it. But you get one song with a major artist, or you make something really great that permeates pop culture, you get a billion streams. Radio play pays a ton. Sync licensing deals direct with the actual label can pay 6 figures. So it's like, be tunnel vision, but don't do it at the expense of your health or living, because you're going to make better art when you take breaks. You take the weekend off. You step away from your computer. If you talked to me 3 years ago, I wouldn't have had the same outlook, but I wish I could have told myself that. You know what I mean?
What do you think? I would imagine there was some part of yourself that was at least questioning it or wondering. What do you think kept you so committed?
Every time that I worked towards something, it happened. A lot of people talk about manifestation or this, that, and the other. When I did something, it happened. I would focus on it. Tunnel vision got me there, but there's a healthier way to do it. And I think that's like, before I had the deal, I was making songs. I didn't know why I was making songs. I mean, people would tell me, they'd be like, why don't you put that out? There's streaming DSPs, streaming platforms. At that time, for some reason, I was like, nah, let me hold off. I wanted to create an album. And then before you know it, I got offered a sync deal. And then all of a sudden, there's a place to put all this music. And then I did that, and other opportunities started coming in from places. It's like, if you love what you do and you work towards it and you truly love it, like, you're not just doing it for the money. Great things happen every single time. It's not a matter of if they're going to happen, it's a matter of when. But the moment that love starts to disappear and you're doing it just for the money, then you're working towards the numbers and you're not being artistic. So the balance kind of moves off. That's what happened to me.
Yeah. So at what point did you start to realize that, having a more, because you referenced data before, right? And sort of the lack of access that comes with working as part of a larger system. So at what point did you realize that having direct access, being in that line of data was really helpful or important if you wanted to exist as an independent artist?
It was the first time that I actually released a song officially out on my own and put a YouTube video up with the video of the performance, and then realized, like, oh, this got 14,000 views, but it didn't translate into streams and it didn't translate into a financial gain. People seen it. At that point, it was just a fancy business card, right? So once I kind of realized that, then I kind of took a step back and said, okay, let me stop just making stuff without thinking of the whole scope of things. And this whole last year has been, I did a few sessions at the beginning of the year and then I just stopped because I needed to fully realize, what does a rollout look like? What does a release look like? Who am I selling this to? Like, what am I selling? Because you're selling something. It's a product. Whether you like it or not, your art has to be packaged up and sold on a shelf next to other people. So if you don't have the data to push that out to people, if you don't have that that email list, then you really have to start from scratch. So you could have millions of streams, but if you don't have millions of email addresses, you don't have shit, right? So it's kind of daunting after the fact.
Yeah, I guess as you start to lay out that larger, I guess, macro picture that you're describing, how do you start to see that as being, a functioning puzzle or machine for yourself?
You start to see the symbiosis in between things. Like, you start to look at it as a full-fledged system. Like, okay, if I make a song and I film it, then I can use the video to push the ad. Then if I have the vinyl and I have the merch and I have all these other things, then I have something to sell, because the physical things actually make more money than the streams in itself, right? So it's like you have to make this high echelon art packaged in this great thing so that you can further get it in front of the right people and then make money off of products and things. And you got to make sure your things are good. You don't want to get a hoodie and then it fall apart the next day of your thing. So you got to think strategically about that. And same thing with like vinyl. You have to find the right person to do it. Make sure that they're going to get it done and the amount of time that you're going to get done. Because I've heard a lot of people have nightmares with how long it takes from the customer putting in an order to actually getting the thing. So you start to look at all these logistical angles and realize, oh, all these things work together. And then when you start bringing on new artists, then it starts kind of growing the plant out. Like I'm one artist on my label, but if I play bass in another band, well, that's a new band. If I play drums in another band, which I play every instrument, so I can start to look at it like I can play musical chairs, make new IPs, right? And they can all be under my umbrella. And I could use all these things that are at our disposal to actually push my narrative. So, there's all these things that you have to consider, but they all kind of lend to themselves. Stuff starts working together when you look at the full picture of things.
What are you doing now to maybe more balance out your life and your time to keep yourself, like sustained creatively? It sounds like you've made some adjustments to your diet, and I don't necessarily just mean food. I mean like kind of in how you're spending your time and what you're taking in.
Well, because I spent 5 years in that tunnel vision and all I did was create, for the first time I had to take a break. I had to take a break from music. And in doing so, I had a lot of time to just sit around and like think about like, what does my day-to-day look like? What does my ideal day-to-day look like? Not just waking up and you're in the DAW. You make a cup of coffee and you're right into the DAW. It's like, so now it's like an event. When I sit down to make a creative thing, I don't plan it. It's not something that I'm like, oh, Friday at 2 o'clock, I'm going to sit down and make a song. I started relying on my internal creative clock to like, whenever I'm inspired, then I create. Not being forced to create because you have to do something. So I had to learn to do other things. I had to get rid of my ego, and like, I even, started working a little job on the side. Mm-hmm. After not doing that for like 10 years, I was just relied on my art because I had to take a break. I had to take a break from music, and, so I started restoring synths. I do that in my daytime and fixing gear and stuff like that for people. And then when I go to do music, that love is back. That joy is back. That feeling that I got in it in the beginning is back now. But I had to take a break. I had to stop. You can't like you can't calibrate a system without stopping. If your shit's all out of whack and you get writer's block, you can't create, every time you sit down at a computer, you get a panic attack, there's something wrong. So like therapy, I started doing, I started like changing what I was eating. I quit sugar, cause that was my ritual. It's like smoke a joint, drink a cup of coffee, get in my DAW and like create. And I realized that those are all vices to my creativity. And then like I was starting to have anxiety issues, and like, so I really had to reassess a lot of things in my life and start over. Because if you want to build something that's actually amazing, you have to start from a blank slate. You can't bring in your past anxiety experiences. You have to look at your failure as a point in which you can use it to better your next situation. So it's a lot of learning self-control, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess are there parts of that? Because I know, like in your book, you refer to like the idea of gas and like fuel for yourself, right? And so, are those things you mentioned? Do those represent forms of that, or are there other things that you do to kind of refuel yourself?
Yeah, I mean, during my 5-year stint of doing nothing but producing and playing instruments, I didn't have a hobby. Because music is my life. So I had to find a hobby. Like I started woodworking on the side. I started, doing repairs and restoring gear. That's a passion of mine, so I had to do those things so that in my downtime, I could have a moment where I don't think about music. Because that's when the love of it starts coming back in, when you don't do it. So, but if that's all you do is create, how do you have those moments?
I'm curious about where your confidence comes from, or how you think about confidence in general, and did it change to any extent over the past 5 years?
Oh my God, yeah. Mostly because I was operating from ego, right? I had toxic people around me. I talked to toxic people that weren't on the record label. There's just people in my life. And in doing so, because my ego was starting to get inflated. Every time I would walk in a room, I was operating like that. Oh, you're not this, you're not that. Like, oh, you don't know about that. You can't operate in music like that. You need to be open creatively. You ever hear that Quincy quote? He's like, oh, leave a little for God to come in the room, and whatever. I don't care what your religion is, but it's just energy. If you can leave a little up for interpretation, that's when all the magic starts to happen. And so I was operating from a point of ego, and that kind of killed my confidence. So after reassessing things and realizing after this long period of success, then I started to realize from like a safe, healthy point of view of, no, I'm good at this. Like this is all I know. I am good at it. And you're operating not from a point of ego, but from a point of truth. It's just a fact. You don't do something for half a decade and not get good at it. But when you operate from a point of ego, like, oh, I'm too good for this, or there's a difference between like having taste and having an ego. I had to kill the ego in order for me to figure out, no, I just have taste. I like a certain type of drummer. I like certain musicians in the room. That's not an ego thing. That's not being too good for whatever. That's just my preferences, and we're making art here. So when you pick a paintbrush, you pick a thin one, a thick one that's messed up. So that's paintbrushes. Musicians are paintbrushes. So yeah, it's a lot of destroying the ego, man. Like when you're filled with all this dopamine, constant dopamine of phone, caffeine, all that shit, sugar, all that stuff, you're like really constantly inundating yourself with dopamine. So by the time you sit down and do something creative, there's really nothing real there. It's all just fabricated hits of dopamine. So I had to let that shit go so that I could really like assess what was important to me.
Yeah, I mean, with your experience at the label and having achieved, and like you said, for a long time, for a decade, being somebody who was able to sustain themselves entirely on their music in whatever form it was at the time. I'm curious about, with that behind you and now with this new kind of era in front of you and the new path ahead, how do you think about success? To what extent has it changed the way that you thought about it, maybe coming into the label?
Oh my God. I mean, massive change in how I think I kind of touched on it earlier with like, I would always get that little dopamine hit on release day, but it wasn't real. Like it didn't really fulfill me. So I was constantly chasing that. So I had to kind of like really, I do music because I love it. I love making art. I love pushing the limits. I love getting the right people together, creating teams. I love putting musicians that normally would work with each other in the room together. And it's like, I think in doing all that stuff, I had to realize like why I truly love doing this so that I could be fulfilled from it, truly fulfilled, and not just operating from a standpoint of, oh, I didn't hit the streaming metric. It didn't, like the data is good for you to, like emails are good. That's about the biggest data point that's good. Streaming metrics, if you're obsessed about that, you can't control that. There's no way. You can't control that. Not unless you're at the top echelon of pop culture. And even then, a lot of that is getting fabricated. So I'm kind of getting back to the in real life, real physical things so that I can feel that actual, I can feel the result of it in my hand. Streaming numbers, that's not something you put in your hand. But a vinyl record, you can put that in your hand. And the price margin, is like bonkers compared, a stream is 0.0037 or whatever tier list thing that they have.
Sure.
A record you sell for $25. One record.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think there's any debate about the numbers. I think the other side of that, there's so many other things, but I think one other important part of that is, if you're really going to be very businessy about it, is cost of the acquisition of a customer, and that is in a world where everybody has the same, roughly equal access to upload things.
Right.
To be able to capture the attention of somebody to the extent to which they're able to or willing to support you to that extent. So what I'm curious about is, and I think that sort of connects to making content on some level, right? Whether, like you said, it's those YouTube performance videos that you've done, or it's short form stuff on platforms, and the way that that can potentially become a conveyor belt in the way that you are on one at the label. So I'm wondering about, like, do you see those two things like potentially as creating a similar kind of working pattern, or do you see them as completely different things? Or
no, the conveyor belt still exists, but at least it's your conveyor belt. You can control it, right? So I think there's a lot of great record labels out there as examples that we can look at. Mine is so new that I'm kind of just writing this new thing for myself and figuring it out. But there's many examples of success, like Coal Mine, Daptone. These are all record labels that have been artist facing. Like, that's one main, like, important thing that I want to stress is that the moment I start signing artists to my label, it's not going to just be because I love their music. It's going to be because I want to teach them how the music business actually works, and not keep them. 1 or 2 albums, great. We've made stuff together, but now I've given you the tools so that you can do it yourself. Because that's what labels are. It's gate-kept information. They keep all the things that they use, but they don't teach the artist. If they taught the artist, that's why in the description of my book on the site where it's listed, it says every record label should buy this for an artist they sign, because it shows you the full scope of, like, how a record label kind of works. Not the super details, but from a large scope, so that you can make your own conveyor belt. Because eventually that deal is gonna end. What do you want to do? You want to be left with nothing, or do you want to be left with tools that you can use to move forward? So that's kind of how I view it. And I'm not mad at the system. Can't be mad at the system. That's, you can't be mad at someone else's success, but you need to learn to accumulate it for yourself and navigate it.
Well, it is. It sounds like it's nice. It sounds like you want to take your experience and help empower other artists to help them help themselves, essentially, while being able to put out records and music that you actually like. So with that said, do you want to talk about a little bit about your label, and maybe if you're looking for artists, the kind of artists that you're looking for, and how you think about all of that?
So right now I have a few bands that I've assembled. I'm going to be releasing some of the prior releases that I did with my back catalog and with some of the bands that I've made. But in terms of, like, artists that I'm looking for artists that are wanting to push the boundaries on, I don't care about genre, labeling, because I believe that we're past that. You need it to be put on the shelf with your metadata, when a song goes up, but I want people that are pushing the limits of mixing different things together. And it's very important that I find artists that can play live. I don't want someone that's going to mime something in the studio. I want someone that can go out and play the records just like they sound on the record. Because I want to operate like they did back in the 60s and 70s. What you see is what you get. Like, every performance video that I've made has been a video of that song while we recorded it. Not, maybe we'll do a little editing, a little nudging, But what you see is what you get, because when you come and see us live, you see and hear the same exact thing. So that's really, really important to me. I'm definitely looking for artists that want to make concept pieces. Like singles are great, very important. But I want to get back to making records, no filler bullshit. Like if I'm going to bring on an artist, I want the standard that I have is like Dark Side of the Moon. I want every song to be fulfilling. And if you got to dig, you got to keep digging to get there. So that's how I approach things. And that's why I've been so picky to bring on people into my ecosystem, because they're there. They're out there in the world. But I have high standards when it comes to things, because I want to make a difference. I want to put out art that is going to drive pop culture, not just be a brief. If you noticed, when a song is good, it gets synced. It doesn't need a brief. You know what I mean? Like the songs you hear on the radio, they're synced because they make great shit, not because they had a brief. Oh, I need to make the song like this. No, just good songs do well. It's simple as that.
And you want to tell us, what did you learn in the process of writing this book? What made you want to take that experience and distill it in that kind of form? Because it's a challenging thing to do.
I mean, I think I wanted to be vulnerable for the first time and like let people into like the truth of, there's a lot of, crazy shit in there, and a lot of truth that I had to tell to explain to people like how serious I take music and the cost of it in doing so. And really I made it because there's books on the music business, but not from a psychological standpoint. Like there's, how the music business works, or Music Business for Idiots, or, books like this that talk about a lot of analytical things, but there's no one that actually has talked about psychologically what it does to you, how pleasure changes, because you're always upping that level, and it's always, you're chasing constantly. You can't avoid that. Yeah. It's just like, it's built in the experience. You're never going to avoid it. The reason I wrote this book, though, is because I want to catch that person at the beginning of that opportunity. It'll help people that get out of these opportunities too, because it helps you plan what a record label looks like for yourself. But if I can catch people right before they get in those situations, then I can stop another person from going down the same road that I did. So it's really preventative, if anything, because I went through a roller coaster, man. Like, there's a lot of great times, but there was also a lot of heavy situations that I didn't know how to navigate. So that's really just reality of it.
When I listen to all of this and thinking about your book, I'm curious about how you think about planning now, and also the tension between balancing that and being, properly in the moment and enjoying what you're doing, focused on the thing, not to the point maybe where you have tunnel vision per se. But it sounds like what this has taught you a lot is the importance of looking ahead to an extent.
Yes.
And I'm curious about how you think about, how do you balance that for yourself in terms of, like we were talking about before, you can be really busy planning the rest of your life and not live to see the next day, So, but also with as we've talked about, kind of the core of this conversation too, is that without any planning, you can end up in a place that you could have avoided had you planned. So I'm curious about how you think about balancing that tension, because that kind of feels like really what's at the center and underneath all of this.
It's absolutely balanced. It's kind of like, when you're overworking yourself, like when you're burning the candle at both ends, because the things that you naturally do start to become irrelevant. Like I would forget to eat food I would forget to take care of myself. I fast food every day, ordering Uber Eats, just like all these things that you don't think about, which are kind of slowly affecting you in some type of way. So stopping all that, taking a step back, and like cooking for myself, making food every day. I love cooking. I love, making food for other people. And so I'm using these like things to really get back to living a life so that the art is fun. And you got a plan. It's extremely important for your success. But it's like if you have that thing in the back of your head that's like, there's something that I need to do, and you keep ignoring it, that thing's going to bite you in the ass. So it's more about like realizing that you need to address all these thoughts that you have in your head. Don't just go over them. Don't just think they're going to work themselves out, but actually like try to figure it out. You can't figure out everything. You're not going to be able to have control of everything. But the more things that you have a plan for, then at least you'll have somewhat of an antidote when they present themselves. So I thought during my stint that because I was working so hard that financial gain would happen, but then realized like, I don't know anything about finances. So if you don't know anything about finances, how can you be financially fit? Because you just keep spending money. You know what I mean? You're not investing it. Mm-hmm. You're not investing it towards the right things. You're just spending money, hemorrhaging money. So you got to take a look at all that stuff. If you want to be in the music business, you have to have a grasp on your finances from every angle. What you're spending, what you need to spend that maybe you don't want to spend, production costs. If you're an indie label, you are everything, taxes, like no one wants to think about taxes, but then, you know what I mean? When that phone call comes, when that message comes and you don't have it, it's just like, you got to think of all these things so that at least you can be prepared to weather the storm in the grand scheme.
All right, man, I'm going to drop into these kind of shorter form questions for you, but feel free to answer them with as many words as you need.
Okay.
What's your most piece of hardware right now?
Oh, man. My 1073 Zulu chain. Like, gotta have it. Have to have it.
Best free plugin or tool you'd recommend to everybody?
Soft-tube saturator.
Yeah, actually, you can totally vouch for that, right? You dropped that into the session that you shared with us.
Mm-hmm.
One production technique you overuse?
Jeez. Put reverb on a bass.
What's a record you've sampled that you never publicly admit to until now?
I've never sampled a record.
Wow, never.
Never. I've used sample packs, but I've never sampled a 4-chord anything. One shot is as far as I've ever gone.
A producer whose process you'd want to spend a day observing?
The Count.
What is it about The Count?
I see a lot of parallels in my own creative thing. It's funny. It's funny to kind of see other people while you're doing something, then all of a sudden you see them doing it, and you're like, wait, they're doing the same shit. How did they come to that same parallel? So I love his sonics, the way he creates it. I'd love to just see his process and what gear he uses.
Yeah, shout out to The Count.
Yeah.
Something in your studio you've been meaning to organize or fix for months?
Man, I got a Korg Chrome, and the bottom octave keys don't work on it. But I just recently tore it apart, and now I'm going to fix it. But I know what's broken in it. Sometimes it's good to just know what's wrong with it, at least so that you can fix it.
Yeah, it's hard to solve a problem if you don't know what the problem is.
Yeah, I mean, repairing keyboards in my spare time actually helps me out a lot now because I know I'm not afraid to take it apart. You know,
I wish you were closer by, man. You know,
there's always a tech in your backyard.
3 artists that changed how you think about music.
Oh man, Sharon Jones, Dap Kings, Kenny Beats. I've learned a ton from watching his live streams, and Mark Ronson, just like the GOAT of production, in my opinion.
Who's an underrated producer you wish more people knew about?
John Bellion.
This is okay. Last book, movie, or show that stuck with you?
Oh man, I would have to say Rich Dad Poor Dad.
What's something about the music industry? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no. You're...
Okay. Yeah, I love that. This question feels perfect for you, which is what's something about the music industry that would surprise outsiders?
That laziness is common and it's not a bad thing.
Best piece of unsolicited advice you've ever ignored and shouldn't have?
Oh, that's a good one. To not put tons of plugins on things. Early in my career, you know, I ignored that a lot until I worked with some bigger people and they're like, dude, does it sound good? Turn it up. If it doesn't, re-record it.
Wow. I love it. If you could change one thing about the internet, what would it be?
I wish that the algorithm was like it used to be where you post something and it goes to your followers.
If you were a character from a book, movie, TV show, etc., who would you be?
Man. Inspector Gadget. For sure.
Oh my God, that's amazing. So man, that's all I have for you. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the people listening before we get out of here?
Look forward to listen to my records, Slow Burn Records. It's out. We're out, but we're going to be dropping vinyl soon. We're going to do Saturday drops, so look out for that.
Cool. Very cool, man. Craig David, thanks so much for coming through, man. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Right
and
on.
Thank you for everybody else who subscribed to the show. He shared a very deep 1-hour session where he built a track from scratch using hardware, talked about all kinds of techniques, miking, plugins, the lack of plugins, as he just referred to. Can't recommend enough that you go check that out. So thanks again, man, for doing that. That was really cool.
My pleasure.
And yeah, man, we will catch you in the next episode of Producer Head. This has been Toru for Greg David. We will catch you next time. Peace.
That'll do it for my conversation with Greg David. A couple things before we go. One, you can check his full hour-long Making a Track from Scratch on the Pocket playlist on YouTube. If you don't already have access, subscribe to the podcast for free, and I will drop you the link, producerhead.substack.com. 2 episodes that I will recommend that are great continuations of this. The Ian Ewing episode, a few episodes back, another look at streaming and the cost benefits of that and building your own fan base. Also, Matt Wyatt, a couple episodes back. So check those 2 out if you enjoyed this one. Share this with a producer who belongs here. This has been Toru. We will catch you in the next episode. Peace.